makes this work. It was a lot of fun.
Now, by talking about this DDS, I do have to make one confession real quick. In the very beginning of DDS 1, in that video clip that Yuri just talked about, for about a second or so, it says on the screen Varna. I did what I thought an extensive search over the internet and tried to come across the real name of this particular god in the Hindu religion, and this is the thing that I found, and I went with it without thinking further, and then it turns out that the more common spelling of that guy was Varuna. And, well, that was like way after we were done with the game, so I really felt bad about it, honestly. And since then, I decided to make sure that I, have like a number of cross-references so that, everything that I put inside the game is, at least, mainstream.
He definitely does this.
Okay, now next up is Devil Summoner, Raido Kuzunoha versus the Soulless Army.
Now this was a series where this actually was the first game I worked on, not just the first SMT, but the first game ever. And it's the first entry to hit America in the Devil Summoner series. It's a pretty good starting point because it's so different from the other two games. It takes place in an interesting time period. It was one of the first games to really break off from the main SMT style of gameplay and started experimenting a little bit more with the action stuff.
What else? This game took place in the early 20th century Japan, and therefore there was a little bit of debate about whether to change place names, the store signs that you can see on the map and whatnot, from Japanese to English. But after a little bit of debate, we decided to keep everything in Japanese because we thought changing to English would lose the feeling, the touch of the Japan in 1910.
Yeah, the storyline revolves heavily around the conflict between modernism and traditional Japan. To convert too much into English or something that Americans could understand would kind of lose its feeling.
Now, by the way, this game doesn't have any voice, which may seem kind of odd following DDS. But what I think is that I treat this title sort of like a black and white film of old days where there were no voices. I don't know if Atlus Japan thought about that, but I thought it was a very interesting way to tell the story that way.
And of course that meant that pretty much all the feeling of the characters had to be conveyed through the text. And my partner on the game, Tom Hewlett, and I decided to go with a very 30s slang. We used a lot of period language, a lot of period vernacular to try to convey the era that it was set in. Of course, a lot of it was American slang, although we still felt that was the best way to get things across, because this was a very different time. But then there's another time in the game, and this is one of those times that we're going to say some spoilers. So, but near the end of the game, you encounter a bunch of people from the future who are basically, they send their auras out into the past to kind of vacation there, and the language we came up for that was it was pretty hard to understand and kind of intentionally so. We wanted to give it a bit of a Clockwork Orange feel, where it was something you kind of had to work at and kind of put the pieces together in your head to figure out what they were saying based on the context. I think I even used one Clockwork Orange word orange, but a lot of it is just an original slang language that we made up.
Yeah, when we were debugging the game, I think I saw Nick's text for the first time, and I said, "What is this thing?"
Yeah, I think a lot of the testers asked that too. Is this a bug? What does this mean?
But eventually, everybody got the idea. So.
Oh, and this game also had the latest evolution of the character of Jack Frost, who's been in pretty much the entire series. But he started off as just Jack Frost, and he kind of eventually wormed his way into Atlus' heart as their mascot. And ever since then, he's had more variations on the demon. They got into King Frost, which was a bunch of Jack Frost bundled up together and given a scepter and a crown. Then in Nocturne, Black Frost was introduced, the evil version of him. And then in this game, the latest in the series was Raiho, where Jack Frost manages to get a set of Raiho's clothes and goes around calling himself a detective.
Okay, and here comes Persona 3. By the way, real quick, how many of you guys liked this US version box? Well, compared to the US version, I mean the Japanese version, I guess.
We'll take anything.
I wish I can show you, but I don't think we have the
It was
slide.
on the first slide.
Yeah,
So you have good memories.
Okay, well, the first Persona, well, let's move on to Persona 2. Persona 2 was released in 2000. This was released in 2007. Well, it's been a long time, and this Persona has evolved a lot. We decided to keep the high school student setting, in Japan, like everything intact, really. Again, a lot of debates, really, but we decided, I think the US now can handle this title as is. And we tried our best to keep that Japanese feel intact, but whatever we had to change, something that, like nobody over here would, have even the slightest idea of, we did have to change those, so, people would understand.
Although there's a surprising amount of text. Things like on the TV, if you look in the game, they'll make references to Japanese holidays like Hachiju Hachien. And I remember we kept a lot of that.
Now, this game, it wasn't just the regular RPG, as everybody knows. It combined that dungeon crawling RPG with a high school life simulation together. In my opinion, that really made it into a role-playing game in a true sense, I would say. I mean, there's a bunch of games out there where you do fight monsters and whatnot, follow the storyline, watch the movies, whatever. But there really isn't that many games that's made in Japan where you have a freedom of what you can do. So this was a very big evolutionary step, at least in Atlus Japan side, I would say.
If you ever played an RPG and wonder, well, what do they do when they're not saving the world? This is the game for you.
Now, some of you may have heard of this debate about the spelling of the name Aegis. The original Japanese spelling was spelled Aegis. Well, we were going to just keep that spelling, and then we just learned really by, I think it was one of the guys that in our office saying, that's not spelled, or no, that's not pronounced Aegis, but it's spelled Aegis. So yeah, should I keep the spelling and not go with a true pronunciation, or should I go with the pronunciation and tweak the spelling? And then I found out later that the word Aegis, it had a Greek original word that was spelled Aigis. So we decided to keep the pronunciation but use that spelling.
This is all part of the insane amount of research that you does for every SMT game. I know that we even do things like use the original Chinese pronunciations for the Chinese demons or the Chinese spellings rather than the Japanese versions.
Now, okay, enough about myself or Nick. Thank you. Let's move over to the voice. Now, Yuri over here played the role of the protagonist.
Once again, not that many lines.
However, those few lines were some of the toughest in the game because Yuri had to pronounce, or not only pronounce, but shout out all the persona names.
That was fun.
We were very, I guess, pessimistic. When we went into recording, we were all worried, how it was going to turn out. And then we asked Yuri to, go ahead and try it out. And then